question in the hallway talking about backdrop, and he was trying to get me to answer the question, and I didn't quite understand where he was going with it. And we're going to use Lieutenant Gallagher because it's what kind of prompted the discussion in the firehouse. That his plan is to backdrop 5 years. So he would be a 30-year employee. He would have maxed out his monthly average final compensation at 85%, and his plan is to backdrop and have 5 years of backdrop money. With his health issue, if it hadn't turned out the way it did, there would be no backdrop money for his spouse. He would get the 85% or 80% if it was declared a line of duty tax-free. Do you understand that? So if he didn't have the outcome he had, there would be no backdrop money. It would be based on a 25-year that he would maxed out at the 85%. So that's another factor to think about when you're thinking about forward drop, backdrop. That if his outcome had been different and he was in the forward drop, then there would have been a monthly distribution to his spouse and also drop money there for him.
But to clarify, that would be a full 85% though, correct?
Yes.
So what you're saying, if a 28, 29, 30-year, well not 30, 28, 29-year veteran dies, you get the 85%, that's it?
Yes.
Okay.
You know,
Or the
depending
80%.
on the circumstances, whether it gets declared line of duty, not line of duty, that stuff. But the point is that if you get that far and you're planning on backdropping, and you're starting to have health issues or whatever, that's a factor. So I just want to do that. I think most of you know Angela Buchanan with Nationwide. They're a partner with the IAFF and the IAFF Financial Corp. And Angela's going to walk you through some of the tax consequences and tax laws on the different money that you have when you retire.
Katie, thanks one.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Katie.
Did everybody get this handout? I tried to get them around to the door. If you didn't, there's still a few up here because I'm going to reference this a couple times. So if you need one. Well, good morning. Thank you for having me. As he said, I'm Angela Buchanan with Nationwide Retirement Solutions, and we've had the privilege to work with the fire department. We were bargained in, gosh, I cannot believe it, almost 10 years ago, to be added as a 457 option within just the fire department. So it's kind of unique. We only work with you all, and that's it here at the city. So it's been a great privilege, and I look forward to continuing working with you guys. So today what we're going to talk about, that Chief Lane asked me to talk about, is kind of what is the deferred compensation program. I'm going to go over that briefly. Most of you already participate in it. If you don't, see me after the meeting and I will help you begin saving for your retirement. And we'll talk about some of the limits and how you can take distributions in your 457. We're also going to talk a little bit about drop distributions. We've had a couple questions this morning about it, so I'm going to do my best. It can be a little confusing depending on your age, and so we're going to talk about that. And then also we're going to talk a little bit just about general and just retirement questions that you guys might have as it relates to the deferred comp, this drop money, and some of the things you need to think about from a tax standpoint as you're walking out the door. We'll talk a little bit about what you can do with your accrued vacation and sick time. You have an option to put some of that into your deferred comp to avoid taxes, and we'll talk a little bit about maybe the benefits of doing that if it makes sense for you. So the deferred compensation program was set up specifically for city, county, and state governments way back in the 70s. It's a great program because it allows you to put money away pre-tax every payday towards your retirement while you're working. For the folks in this room who are getting close to retirement or had at least 20 years or plus, the reason why deferred comp is important is because you can walk out the door regardless of your age and there is no early withdrawal penalty. So you can literally be 47 years old, have your 20 years in or 25 years in, walk out the door, and you can access that account without a penalty. You don't have to take a distribution, but if you choose to, you can. While you're working, the limit for everybody in this room that is under the age of 50 is $17,500. So that is the maximum you can put into your deferred comp this year. The IRS issues what the limits are for the following year, go around every fall, like October, November. if they're gonna change or not. But for sake today, we know it's 17,500. If you're over age 50 or will be 50 this year, you can start utilizing what's called the over age 50 catch-up, which allows you to contribute an additional $5,500 on top of the 17,500. So if you can afford it, it allows you to put money in, and the only catch is you gotta be 50 or older, okay? There is another catch-up called the 3-year catch-up that you can utilize the last 3 years prior to the year that you retire. And the rule around that is you can double up on whatever the normal limit is. So it would be $35,000 is what you could put in for 3 years prior to the year that you walk out the door. So we have a couple people in the department utilizing that today, but it's a lot of money. And so, you know, it's tough for people to kind of come up with that kind of money when you're trying to, you know, enjoy life as it is as well. So there's a couple different ways. If you did not, you know, contribute at the level or couldn't afford to because you had young families, you know, all the things that are those big money expenses, the latter part of your career, there's some good opportunities to really pile some money into deferred comp. Yes?
Do you have to put that in every year, or can you go at the end of 3 years and say, I'm gonna make up for the last 3
Every
years?
calendar year, says the IRS. And if you stop it, say, oh, I only did 2 years, and then 2 years later, you're like, hey, I want to do another year, it has to be 3 consecutive years. Yes?
If you join the forward drop, if you go into the forward drop, does it have to be the 3 years?
Has nothing to do with your actual retirement. I mean, it does, but you can utilize a 3-year catch-up when you're in forward drop,
Okay,
as long as you do it 3 years before you walk out the door. So
Has
in
to
your
be the
4-year
last
drop,
3
you couldn't really do it. You could do 1 year. You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So
Has to be the last 3 years?
the last 3 years prior to the year that you retire.
But you don't have to retire, you can start at year 17, is that correct? 3 years prior.
It's
you're
based on your
eligible.
pension.
So last year you're eligible. Eligible to retire.
Eligible to retire.
Then you say pass, it doesn't matter.
Correct.
Probably the over age 50 is the most utilized, frankly. And the nice thing about that is when you're walking out the door, and we kind of touched on it earlier, if you have any accrued sick or vacation time, you're being paid out, and I know there's different formulas for that, but Katie will calculate that for you, and whatever that dollar amount equals, you would have the option to roll that into your deferred compensation program. It's a great write-off as you're walking out the door, and then remember, you can turn around a month later or the next calendar year, which is a new tax year, and start distributions if you choose. So there's a ton of flexibility, yes.
is that sick and vacation time pre-tax to go into the 457?
But you gotta make the arrangements before they cut you that check, that's in your final pay.
But,
So there's just some paperwork we do.
so, you're saying in November, you roll all your sick leave vacation into your plan, and then you're retired next year?
No, it's the year when you walk out the door. So if you're walking out the door and you're retiring in November,
Perfect example. So I'm retiring in November, I roll my sick leave and my vacation into,
defer comp.
and then in January, I can start taking it out.
You could literally start a week after you leave if you wanted to, but for tax purposes, you're probably better off waiting till January.
Won't I be taxed when I take that out?
You will, but
So
if
what's
you
the
had
difference?
higher income for that year and you were to take a really large chunk of sum of money, you know, you might throw you in a different tax bracket. That's where you need to get your own individual tax advice, but depending on where you are in the tax bracket, it could bump you up and all of a sudden you have to pay more on it. So if you're really in control, you can take your deferred comp out. The key for the IRS is you've separated service. Remember, when you go into drop, you have not separated service. You've retired within the pension plan technically, but you're still working and showing up. So you can still contribute, but you're not eligible for just straight out distribution. That's when you walk out the door, do all your paperwork and, you know, turn in your equipment, kind of thing. When you go into drop, keep in mind too, the forward drop, you stop paying the 7.49%, right, is your contribution. One thing I would plan to see is that you put some or all of that, start putting it towards deferred comp. You're used to it coming out of your check anyway. And if you haven't funded your deferred comp at the level you should, why wouldn't you just roll that in? And at least for the next 5 years, or maybe if you leave a little bit sooner, it's a great way to really fatten it up on top of what you're already doing, and your check's the same, basically. So that's just a little seed to plant for when that time comes, if you decide to go into the forward drop. We see a lot of people do that, not only in this department, but in other fire and police departments too. Okay. As far as distributions from your 457 plan, you're eligible the minute you walk out the door. There is some paperwork you have to complete, and the city will sign off on your distribution paperwork. It's an IRS rule, they have to sign off only the first time, so that we know it's legal to make the distribution. I work with Sandy on that at the city, and basically they sign off after you get your final check. So once that's done, then they sign it, like I got Chief McCormick's paperwork today. So, you know, he left, and so we submitted his payout paperwork to our home office. You can take distributions any way you want. You can call in randomly and say, hey, I need $10,000, I need a new air conditioner or a new roof. You pay always a flat 20% tax on any partial distributions out of a deferred comp program.
You'll withhold that automatically?
Yes, sir. So any distributions you take in a calendar year, the following spring, you will get a 1099-R, which means it's a retirement account, and then we will show in a little box what you've already paid, that 20% tax, because we've already sent it to Uncle Sam on your behalf. Now, whether you're in a higher tax bracket and you owe more money, it all just counts as normal income, so it just counts in there without any other income you have, any write-offs you have. You know, you just kind of get settled out in the dust when you go to file your taxes. You can set up monthly distributions. You say, hey, I want $1,000 a month. You can change that monthly contribution every 30 days. While you're taking that monthly distribution of $1,000, all of a sudden you're like, hey, we want to go on a cruise, we need $5 grand. You can call in and take partial distributions. It will not disrupt your monthly distribution. But remember, every time you take money, you pay a tax. Okay. Nationwide does not charge a fee for any processing or anything like that. It's just the flat 20% federal income tax situation.
Does that count for your monthly distribution?
You know, the monthly depends on how long you set it up for, but yeah, typically you fill out like a W-2, so you can even say, hey, I filed married 1 or single 0 or whatever. So, and you can stop and start your contributions or your distributions at any time. So something changes, you retire for a couple years, you get bored, it happens. Go get another job or do something, you know, turn a hobby into a career. You're earning some income, you can stop the distribution whenever you want and then restart it whenever you want. Yes,
If you decide to cash out on it, is there a major process to that, or you just submit?
you just check
Send
lump
them
sum
money.
on the same paperwork that you would for any other type of distribution. We can set up direct deposit, so we'll just wire the money to an account that you tell us to, and you just pay the flat 20% tax we would pull out, and then you would get a 1099. Just be careful, because if you have you've been a good saver in your deferred comp, it can be a pretty big tax hit. So just think about, you know, how you do that.
Can you request a higher tax amount taken out, like 25, 30%?
Sure, you can. Sure. One thing you can do too is once we've established a district, like for instance, once you've set up all your payout paperwork and we've got your direct deposit information, you can even call in and we will do over the phone. It's always a recorded phone call. When you call into our home office, we will do distributions up to $10,000, no paperwork. So if you're traveling, if you're overseas, you know, whatever, stuff happens, people need money, you can call in. What's that? Yeah. You're so very mature. You know, you have that flexibility. Anything over $10,000, you gotta complete a form,
Is that a year, calendar year?
whatever you want. Up to the $10,000 over the phone?
1 month, 10,000, next month.
Yep. Absolutely.
No paperwork?
No paperwork. So it's almost too easy, right? But yeah, so we try to make it flexible for you so you can access it when and how you want to. Are there any more questions about deferred comp? Yes.
One more. After you separate and retire, can you contribute any more to the 457 or you're done?
You're done. IRS says it can only be done while you're employed and through a payroll deduction. You're no longer getting a paycheck.
If you
So
took
you
a
can-
career at another entity?
Like
could you-
another city or county,
or
sure. You
What if
could-
it was a private business or?
That's a 401k, is what private companies use, so sure, you could set up an account, and start, you know, contributing there, but it'd be separate from your 457.
Okay.
Yes.
Hey, go ahead, Rick. I was gonna ask to, put roll vacation money into that. Do I need to talk to you? And is there a number here to,
I have my cards up here if you want to grab a card.
okay.
Yeah, so we can talk it through. But the key is to go meet with Katie or someone in payroll first and kind of see what it looks like. I'm not gonna pretend to know all the ins and outs of, you know, if you got 20 years, you get half and all that and you're sick and then you lose. And I know people burn hours. But you guys know all that stuff. So at that point, you come see me and say, okay, this is what I'm doing, and I'm gonna have roughly this amount of chunk of money, I don't wanna get taxed on it. And then we'll look at how much you've contributed for that calendar year so far through your paycheck. And then we'll back that out, either the 17,500 or the over age 50 amount, if you're over 50. And we'll figure it all out and see how much you can put in there.
So are you at City Hall or?
No, I work for Nationwide, you just call me, I don't have
Okay,
an office.
so to come sit down with you.
Yeah, we'll just meet for lunch, or I'll come by the station, you know, whatever.
All right.
Yes. What's that? Oh, you know.
Do you pay for dinner like the union does when you eat dinner?
I do too, my lunch, that is true. Okay, go ahead.
I'm just sitting here.
No, we're not going to Ruth Chris for lunch. We're like clear.
Two questions. One was, and I know we kind of talked about it before, rolling partial drop money. Were you going to go into this?
I'm about to go to that next.
Okay, so I'll let you unfold it.
Okay.
How about meeting the age 50 requirement? If you're 49 in that calendar year that you're going to be 50,
You're okay.
You meet that 50.
So if you're separating, well, for the age 50 catch-up that we're talking about, as long as you're gonna be 50 sometime that year, so you can start the catch-up in January, and if your birthday's not until October when you're gonna turn 50, you're fine. As long as you're gonna be 50 before December 31st that calendar year.
Is that also with the drop?
Same rule.
Because like, obviously, if you leave at 49, you get hit with a 10% penalty. But if in that year, you're going to retire, you are 49, but later that year, you're going to be 50, you meet the 50
As long
requirement.
as you're in that calendar year,
Right.
you will turn 50. It doesn't matter when you actually separate service, as long as you attain 50 that year. Yes,
Thanks,
sir.
Steve. Can the money in the 401A be rolled over into this plan?
Yes, sir. You separate from service, your share plan account, which is what he's asking about, is your 401A plan with Nationwide, and frankly, your 457, all becomes portable. Most people kind of leave it where it is because of the fees are so much lower, and you want to be careful you don't lock it up in an IRA or something, but yeah, you can roll the 401A into the 457, you can leave it there. 401A has a little bit different rule on distributions, we're going to talk about in a minute, your share plan. I'm trying to, like, in my presentation, just stick with one thing, and then we'll go, because it gets confusing on each, because they all have different tax consequences. But yes, the answer is yes. Jeff, do you have a question? Yes.
So you said you can withdraw upon separation, there's no age requirement on that?
Deferred comp is the only retirement plan like that. It's under IRS code 457. You can be 35 years old and just making a career change.
What about that 401A money if you put it in there?
No, it stays with whatever the tax rules are on that 401A.
Where
It
it
goes
came
with
from?
it.
Okay.
So think about the source. It carries whatever rules with it.
Okay.
The IRS isn't that nice. Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice if they were? Yes.
In reference to the drop money, is there a one time when you separate a plan where you can get a certain amount over like 20 years? I heard a rumor or something about a one-time plan. 'Cause typically you can't touch it till you're 59, right?
Oh, you're talking about the 72T?
Yes,
So it's
yes.
equal payments over 10 years.
Okay.
10 years.
From
So
the
you
time
can-
you separate
It
employment?
depends. It depends on how old you are. And then it's, or until you turn the age 59 and a half.
All right, you can't touch it till 59. So the only way to touch it before 59 and a half is the 72T?
But that can be restrictive. So you definitely, we can run 72T calculations for you so you understand what that means. But once you go into it, you can never change it, you're locked in.
Okay.
So, and they're equal payments over a set period
No
of time.
penalties on that money somehow?
There's no penalty. You pay tax, but
Tax,
there's a
right.
10% penalty as well.
No age?
You said there was an age requirement on that? 72T?
No, it's just if you want to get to that money before 59 and a half, that would be one way to do it with equal payments over a certain period of time, up until you reach 59 and a half, then at that point, any money that's left, you can take out.
Right.
But it can be restrictive, because once you set that up, you're locked in, if you back out of it, then they go back and retro and charge you the 10% penalty on everything you've taken out, so be very careful. Okay, so, and very quickly, I just want to touch on, while you're working in deferred comp, you can access the account through an unforeseen emergency or loans. But other than that, it's pretty untouchable. And frankly, you shouldn't touch it. It's a retirement plan. You're going to need it in retirement. I haven't met anybody, I've been doing this 18 years, who said I saved too much. God, I have too much money in my deferred comp. It just never has happened. So try not to dip in there, but you know, you have some access, but you're only really hurting yourself, you know, because, you know, time is your friend. The longer that money can be in there working and earning interest, the more you'll have when you walk out the door. And because there is no early withdrawal penalty, deferred comp is your buddy, man, especially for you guys leave so young. You're gonna wanna be able to access this account, and it's a great thing to be able to build it up. Okay, so let's talk about drop. When I talk about drop, it doesn't matter whether you forward drop or backward drop, okay? Just the bottom line is you're gonna sit with Katie and you're gonna get some kind of drop check, right? So it matters how old you are in drop. So what I tried to do is create a sheet for everybody to reference as we talk about this. So if you go to the 10% penalty rules on this sheet, I kind of asked everybody to look at. So start by asking yourself a couple of questions. What is your age on December 31st, the year that you separate from your service? It's not the year that you go into drop, it's when you walk out the door. What is your age gonna be that year? And is the distribution from a defined benefit plan or a defined contribution plan? Your pension is a defined benefit plan. Drop is part of your pension. So the IRS says drop is defined benefit money. Does that make sense to everybody? Deferred comp like 457s were considered defined contribution plans. Your pension plan is considered a qualified pension plan in the eyes of the IRS. Deferred comp is non-qualified. And there's different rules that will apply to it. So, we're gonna look at the chart together. I'm just trying to make this as simple as I can. So use the chart on the following page. Note you cannot transition into another column below until you reach age 59 and a half. The first three columns represent your age when you separate service, or what age you will be as of December 31st of that calendar year. And you can't move from one grid. You kind of stay in one place and you stay there. I just wanted to remind you that once you reach 59 and a half, or when you're separating service, if you're 59 and a half or will be that year, none of this chart even applies to you. But it's rare in the fire department we find that. Most people don't work that long. So, the other thing I want you to note is, although the deferred comp, which we just talked about and established, is not subject to an early 10% age penalty, there are different regulations regarding rollovers into the 457 plan. If you separate employment at age 55 or older, you can roll your drop into the 457 account and have access to the funds without the 10% penalty. It doesn't matter if you're high risk or not. So that's a rule for everybody in public sector. If you're 55 or older and you've got drop money, you can roll that into your deferred comp, and there is no, you can take it out later down the road. You don't have to wait till you're 59 and a half, so the magic is 55. That's really the ideal number for everybody in this room.
And that's the age when you separate, correct?
That calendar year, as of December 31st, that year, you need to be turning 55. Okay, excellent, so someone's happy in the corner. So this is where it gets tricky. So, if you are age 50 or older, the year that you separate service, or will be 50 by December 31st, which we already established, you can take a direct distribution from the drop plan. Why is that? Because it's part of the defined benefit plan, and the IRS, when they set up this code for high risk, which is you guys in this room, it's the sworn, you can take it directly from the drop program. So you go meet with Katie, and your drop's worth $300,000. And you're like, well, I need 50 grand for whatever. Pay off my house, or I gotta do some maintenance, whatever. I'm going on a trip. You just want 50 grand. And you're gonna be 50 that year, or you're 52, whatever, you're just over 50, but you're not 55 yet. You can take money from the drop with Katie, and she will issue a check out of the pension for $50,000. You will pay a flat 20% tax. So that leaves you with $250,000. You're like, I don't need it now, I don't want it, I don't want the tax liability, I'm going on to do something else, whatever. And you decide to roll that into deferred comp, an IRA, anything like that, that's a defined contribution or a DC plan. And the regs are different on that, that says the minute you've rolled it, then you have to wait till you're 59 and a half to get the additional money.
But you take that one-time distribution,
From the pension, or drop, because drop's part of your pension, remember?
drop, 2 years later you want additional funds, can you get it? If you're, I didn't think so, okay, so it's a one-time distribution until age 59 and a half.
Because what happens, you have to take the money out of the drop, right?
Yeah.
You got 60 days, no matter what, they want the drop money out of the pension. You have to do something, either they send you a check for the whole amount, or you have to roll it somewhere. So at the time, you'll meet with Katie, and Katie will say, what do you want to do? Here's paperwork. You say, yeah, I need some money, and that's when you indicate that you want a partial cash distribution from the drop, and then you indicate what you're going to do with the remaining amount to roll it over to somewhere.
But I'm gonna repeat it because it's important, so you still, then you don't have access to it until 59 and a half, regardless of where you put it. Okay, thank you.
But you can, but it's a 10% penalty.
Yeah, you can, or you can utilize 72T and do court to pay the 10% penalty.
But there's no penalty on taking all of it.
30%.
Right from the defined from the drop, right there with
The
Katie,
first check
no.
you get, take all of it, then you
The
can
first
put it
50
into
grand,
whatever
no
you would
10%
like to
penalty.
do in a different manner, and then you have access to it however you set that up.
So
It's only if you roll it into one
whatever
of
you
these
take it-
investments. But you can invest it in another way, and there's no penalty on it.
What do you mean you could invest it in another?
Well, if I, let's say
Take
that I
all
have
your money.
$100 in the drop and I take it out, I take $100 out. If I invest it in one of these deferreds, then I am penalized till, or not penalized, but it's held
Just
till.
gotta wait. I mean, you
But-
can get to it, but the IRS says we're gonna ding you.
Right, but I can take that money and put it in my savings account and withdraw it for, or I can put it in the stock
But
market.
you're gonna pay tax on it all at once that calendar year, and that's where people get nailed.
Yeah, that's a problem, because you'll have a significant amount of money in that account, you know, or could have a significant amount of money in that account.
So what's more, the tax or the penalty?
So that's where you have to figure out, it's your, what your situation is.
Right.
Okay, so there's a couple things I handed out. There was another thing I handed out that said IRS, and it's kind of small print, sorry. And if you get one, we'll pile a bunch up here.
Pull it all out, right?
You guys ready? Thank you. Okay, so if you look down towards the middle of the page, it says the following additional exceptions apply only to distributions from a qualified retirement plan. We already determined, right, your pension is a qualified retirement plan.
Could you start again, please?
So in the middle of this page, it says the following additional exceptions, kind of halfway down. Look at number 1. Distributions made to you after you separated from service, we're talking about from qualified plans, which is your pension, your employer, or after, anyway, you can read it, in other words, you can take it without the 10% penalty. So I also had, our attorney, of course, she didn't send it to me until 8:45 this morning, or I would have printed it out, but I already talked to Chief Lane, and he's gonna distribute this to everybody as an attachment. So there's a section, if you even wanna write this down, but we're gonna get it to everybody, within the IRS code, that talks even more about this. Jeff, this will be important to you based on some of the conversations we had. It's section 828 of the Pension Protection Act 2006, section 72T. And if you go all the way down, if there's a question 9. Because what the IRS did, there was so much confusion about this, is they put together like a Q&A sheet. So if you go to question 9, it says, the question is, does the exception to the 10% additional tax under 72T apply if qualified public safety employees roll over distributions from a government defined benefit plan into an IRA or a deferred contribution plan and subsequently takes an early distribution from an IRA? No, the exception to the 10% additional tax applies only to amounts distributed from the defined benefit plan and does not apply to distributions from the defined contribution plan or IRA. Why are you laughing?
No, I just didn't understand.
Yeah.
That's the IRS for you. I'm reading this from the IRS.
Very, very small print.
Can you put that
So the
fire?
question I get all the time is, well, yeah, I don't wanna cash the whole thing out, but I don't need it, I don't wanna pay all those taxes and go to a higher tax bracket, which I totally agree with. But the IRS is very clear that if you're between that 50, and you're between 50 and 55, or 50 and 54 really, and you roll anything of your drop that you don't take some cash out before you walk out the door with Katie, you're gonna roll it over, and the IRS is very clear, you gotta wait till you're 59 and a half, unless you utilize some other equal payments over a period of time.
Now, when you do the 72T, so you set that up, because 59 and a half is a little too long for you to wait. You take that money out, there's nothing to say you can't take it and turn around and put it somewhere else as well.
You just take, it's your money,
It's your money.
you can do whatever you want.
So you realize, oh, I
You can
got
go fund a
another
Roth
job,
IRA, whatever you
or
wanna
something
do.
else happened, I don't need this, but I don't wanna stop it because I'm gonna get hit.
Can't stop it.
So then I just take it now, I no longer need it, and just put it into something else.
But it's the income tax that you're going to get.
You'll still pay income tax on it, but you're taking it out over time, so it's not like a lump sum.
So basically, it gives you access to that money for 59.
It's very restrictive though, so when they run a calculation, this happened to somebody who retired a couple years ago. They ran a calculation, they were not the right age, and they rolled all their money to an outside investment advisor. It wasn't nice. And this person set up 72T. I spoke to this person, I even spoke to their financial planner because they didn't really understand what was happening. So I said, we need to explain this to this person because it can be restrictive. So this person had determined they needed so much money every month. The advisor figured out the 72T, the person rolled all their draws, all their stuff over, including their deferred comp, and 72, and then the outcome was it wasn't enough money every month, because it's based on your age at the time, the balance. I mean, it's not like you pick a magic number and say, this is what I want, until it's pretty complicated. So then this person called me back and said, oh my God, it's not enough money. I want to move everything back to you. Well, they had already rolled and closed their entire nationwide account out. At that point, you're not employed anymore. I can't open another 457 for you. You have to be employed. So just be careful.
So just to clarify, so
Whether that's with us or ICMA, be careful because it's a benefit to have programs like ours because we have oversight by the city.
What if you just leave the account open? Don't close the
Leave
account.
the account, even if you leave $100 in it.
Right.
You know,
that 72T, then you're not determining how much a month you want.
you as an individual, you do not.
It's
It's
determined.
based on the account balance, your age at the time, and you're male, female, they dump you into tables.
Well,
I mean, Mark and Bobby, but it's more, it's not like, okay, I need $3,000 a month, and they say, okay. It doesn't work that way.
Well, if you have say 400 grand, you got to do it 10 years or more. If you do it for 10 years, that'd be 40,000 a year. But if you say you want to do it for 15 years, so you're not making too much each year, it would bring it down to like
Calculation.
to the 30 grand. Right?
They determine how much you need.
They determine it.
Oh, they determine. So
It's based on all kinds of variables.
who's they?
The IRS.
It's like the big-
Oh, good.
To establish the 72T rule, enabling you to do that. It follows the guidelines they've established.
You don't want to talk.
Who are they? Are they somebody I could just have whacked?
And your pension. So if you look at the chart, you know, on the second page, you can kind of see. So, you know, figure out where you are, and then it answers all your questions. So the 175 I put in here because you guys all have that account, the defined you know, it's a 401A, defined contribution plan. So if you're under age 50, does the 10% penalty apply? Yes. Notice in this column, only deferred comp does not have the 10% penalty. So what do you think that means? You're going to be funding putting some money away in your deferred comp because that's what you're going to leverage until you're old enough to dip into. If you're not 55 or older, that's what you're going to leverage dip into until you can access additional money that maybe you will withdraw or whatever. It's a great tool. When I work for Nationwide, we're a private company. Guess I do it until I'm 59 and a half. Everybody does, except people who have a 457 plan. So it's a really cool tool. Then you can see the age 50 to 54. See where it says no for drop. If it comes from the defined benefit plan, you're cool. And we gave a little paragraph above that saying if you rule it, then it changes. And then it talks about age 50, once you get to pretty much 55 on up, you're in pretty good shape. So I hope this helps. If you're totally confused, just, call me or, yes.
Is the 175 money accessible 172?
It's not gonna be much money. I mean, I think the average account balance in the 175 account would be about, with interest of now maybe people are getting 35, 40 grand. You might get another subtle contribution, $100, you might get a little hit here and there, but remember, you cannot put money into the 175 account. You cannot borrow on it, you cannot access it, because it's really almost like pension money. That's the purpose it serves.
Didn't you tell him that you could roll that in?
Once you separate service, you can roll it anywhere you want, as long as it's tax sheltered, yeah. But while you're employed, you really can't do anything with it. Once you separate, then portability rules kick in.
Even if you roll it in,
It keeps it, whatever it started with, the rule carries it. Yeah, it stinks. IRS is not nice. Right. Are there any more questions on this, Jeff?
I have one about the loans, are we to that point yet where I can ask that question?
Sure, any questions you like.
If you have an outstanding loan balance against your 457 account and you separate from service, if you default on that loan, do you still have to pay the 10% since you've
You never
separated?
pay the 10% on the loan, but it becomes a taxable event, and whatever that balance is on the loan at that time, you would have to report as income, and we will send you a 1099 on it.
And will it still have that 10% additional tax?
No,
Because
the
you
loan is
separated.
housed in the 457, which never has the 10%, remember? A loan you're borrowing from the 457, there is no.
Well, I thought you were hit with that 10% if you defaulted on the
There's
loan.
a default penalty, I think we charge you like $75 or something, but that's it.
Okay, good.
That money
But
that
it's
you,
income. So now I know what your plan is.
that money that you borrow like a loan, are you still making interest on that money as if it was still there?
Yes, and you're paying it back to yourself.
And you're paying it back to yourself? It's still accruing interest on that
Correct.
money that's not there?
do you have the ability to pay sooner than later? Is that the monthly payments?
You can't like on your mortgage, on your house payments, say, I'm gonna send in an extra $100 every month.
Oh, no.
But you could get an early payout and say, hey, I wanna pay it off early, what's
No,
my?
if you have a loan against your 457, you just want to write it off, that way you're,
Just pay it off, you mean, and be done with it?
yeah,
Yeah, you can do that in a lump sum. Say, what's my balance, and you send us a check.
okay.
Makes being stupid with money even sound good.
For how long you can keep your accounts separated?
So you start distribution, you mean?
Yes.
By law, you're required, the IRS says if you've not started a distribution, and this applies to any of these accounts, and whether it's an IRA or anything, 70 and a half years of age. So it's the April following the year you turn 70 and a half years of age.
And then do you have to have it cleared out by a certain time or?
So they'll put you into a life table, we'll send you a letter, and we'll just send you a check. We take care of it for you, because if you don't start that, get a distribution, and we calculate what it is per year, on the minimum, it's called RMD, required minimum distribution, otherwise you get penalized 50% of the IRS. So you'll get a letter. And we'll just send you a check ready to publish. Most people have started distribution, it's not especially for you guys, because you're so young.
Yeah, I mean, it's redundant.
Anything else? Yes.
Angela should have went first. No matter
Went out separated less than 50, you have a couple of years, let's say it drops. The only avenue to avoid the 10% is the 72T.
So, and the 72T, you can try out for it or apply for it, and then the IRS is gonna send you back what they feel you should get, and then you can accept it or not accept it?
We don't go to the IRS with it. So what they do is we have there's a worksheet or like a calculation. So you would work with our home office. We would run a 72T based on your age, the account balance, some mail, all these variables will go into it, and then it would spit out what it is. And we run the calculation based on the regs. around that the IRS has established, and then we would say this is roughly what, this is what it would be if you decided to do this.
If you decided to.
So it's not based on, I mean, we said these other variables, but is it just your age and the balance and gender, or is there? is it
I've
your
never run
annual-
one before,
I mean,
Mark
is your
can help me on
previous-
this. I mean,
previous
I know it's your
income annual,
balance, your
or-
age, male versus
There's
female.
three ways, different ways they calculate it. And, you know, age is the biggest factor. Balance,
Life expectancy is one.
life expectancy, that's what comes into your gender.
Mhm.
So they have,
Mandatory distribution.
yeah, there's minor differences in the payouts, in the three different ways. But there is one way that, you know, you want to maximize your payout. They run a different type of calculation. But, you know, somebody 55, you got 100,000 in your account, you know, you're probably going to get somewhere like, you know, maybe 4 or 5% of it out. You know, that's the payout amount. Generally, that's what I've seen in a couple of.
You have, okay.
Yeah, so you're not going to get 10 or 15 or 20%.
You don't see a lot of people utilize it, do you guys?
I rarely see it.
I mean,
But
it's
I've seen it.
unusual, because it's not,
The one thing you gotta remember when you set it up is the real restrictions are, you can't change anything in your
you're
account,
locked in.
except the investment choices. You can't take other money out, or you'll, you know, they'll go back and charge you the taxes if you don't follow the rules. So once you set it up, you gotta pretty much leave everything alone and let
Pretty
it
much locked in.
percolate until you're 59 and a half or you meet the time requirement.
So, it's an option, but definitely let's plan on doing some homework before you pull the lever on that. 'Cause I don't see it utilized a lot, but. Do you have another question?
I do, just to clarify, at the beginning you said 55, you can roll it in, if you drop money into your 457 without penalty, right? But this chart, it says there's no penalty in the drop at 50.
Yeah, 55, between 55, once you hit 55, you're free and clear, man, on drop.
All right, but let's go back to 50. I mean, the chart's the same, it says no under drop.
Because if you take the distribution from the defined benefit plan,
But what if you roll it in between 50 and 54, what happens?
well, that's why we gave the thing at the top, because it was too hard to try to put it into the chart. So, we told you about it at the top. But no, once you roll it, then it's out of the defined benefit plan or the drop program. See the DB next to the word drop?
Correct.
So if you take it directly from the drop, age 50 to 54, no, there is no 10% penalty.
And then you can access out of your 457 as you want.
But then you roll it to your 457, that's a defined contribution, it's a non-qualified plan, and the IRS is very specific, and we'll get it out to you, I just didn't get it soon enough, I would have printed them and brought them, that says the minute you send it over to any of those, then you're a little, it gets, that's when you gotta wait.
So what about a 401A? Is that's not really not on here? Is that something that?
So that's what the 175 is a 401A, so you can see once you get to 55, you're okay, or 59 and a half.
Oh, that is the 401A.
Okay, I think I might run it out of time, I know Isa may need to speak too. I'll be around after the meeting if you have any additional questions. And I'm happy to have any individual appointments. The last thing I would say is I handed out some brochures like this. If you need some help and you're 5 years roughly out from retiring, we have CFPs on staff that can run full financial plans. I have the questionnaire and example of what those would look like, so if you feel like you need some help. Can I really afford to retire? What are my expenses, things like that, then we have services available as our client. Thank you so much.